Okay, welcome back to our conversations on DAX in the Power Pivot data model for Excel. So, just to show you where we've left off, if you're following in order, we are working with that AdventureWorks data warehouse SQL database. We've connected to that using Power Pivot. So we've gone to from database to pull that data in from SQL. I don't want to take the time to walk through that process again. We've done that a bunch of times now, so that's been featured in a few of our videos. So I showed you some basic functions in DAX or using data analysis expressions in the last class. We covered basic aggregation. We talked about structured references. I've got another video that I'm going to show you on basic count functions if you haven't seen that. But what I want to do today is talk to you specifically about one function, and that function is called the calculate function, which is not something you would use in regular Excel very much, but it's something that you'd use in DAX all the time. Probably one of the most used functions when you're writing expressions in DAX. I would say it would be used frequently, like the VLOOKUP function is used frequently in Excel. So now what does that do? Well, in order to understand what it does, let's take a look at two measures that I've created down at the bottom, right? And quick reminder, there are two different types of measures that you can create in DAX. You have implicit measures and explicit measures. If I use the calculation area inside the data model, I am creating an explicit measure. Okay, implicit measures are created automatically when you're inside or when you're in Excel using a regular old pivot table and you change those aggregation settings. That would create an implicit measure. We are working with explicit measures, which are very, very cool. So here's what we're going to say. We're looking at our fact table, specifically our fact internet sales table. And in that table, we've got a product key that corresponds to a specific product that we create. And then we've got the amount that we've actually sold that for, right? So we've got the value or the sales price of that for that item sold. Now, what we're going to say here is that the target to sell or the target sales goal for each product is going to be, say, $80,000, right? So you have an $80,000 target. And what we want to do is evaluate a few specific products, okay? Not all of them. And if you just take a look, so take a look here. Here's our product key. We got a lot of products. So we're not necessarily going to run an analysis of every product just yet. We do have the ability to do that in several ways. But what we're going to do is we're just going to sum up, right? We want to sum up, say, product 214, okay? Or we'll do it again. Instead of 214, since this one's done, I'll show you how to do this twice. We'll sum up, say, product 528, just because it's right there. Okay, so we're going to figure out how much we've made on product 528. Then we're going to figure out if that value is above or below target. Okay, and once we have these measures, remember, explicit measures can be directly used in pivot tables in Excel. And the sweet spot of this is as your SQL database updates, if you've created a connection, when that connection refreshes the SQL database, your dashboard inside Excel is going to automatically tell you when you do hit that target. So there are a lot of really great advanced features that can come from this. So let's talk about why we use the calculate function, what that does for you. In many ways, the calculate function is basically like sum if or average if. It is a contextual filter if statement, meaning that you can give it an expression like sum or average or min or max. And from that expression, you can then use it specifically applied to certain types of data. So you can filter to specifically aggregate a certain type of data. So basically, in many cases, or in so many words here, what I'm doing is a sum if product 528. Okay, sum if product 528. So let's look at the calculate function. So I'm just going to jump underneath this. So this is an example of product 214 that I just did. And we can do that again just so you can see it. Then we're going to practice a little bit and we'll do 528. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start writing my explicit measure here. So I'm going to go equals, and I'm going to start with calculate. So calculate's actually not too tough as long as you think of it sort of from the inside out. So you think about what your final goal is. So when it says calculate, the first argument you need for this calculate function is the expression, right? So what are we doing? Are we taking the smallest number? Are we taking the largest number? Are we averaging? Are we counting? Right? And in this particular case, we are going to just do something basic. We are going to do a sum. Okay? Now the expression is not written yet. That's just the aggregation that we want. So we're going to do a sum of our fact internet sales table, and we want specifically the sales amount. So I'm going to, instead of just typing that out, I can jump down to sales amount. Okay, so quick reminder of what this looks like, because remember, this is different from Excel. Quick reminder, Excel uses something called A1 style referencing, right? So for example, you would have something like C6, which would be column C, row 6, or D7, column D, row 7, okay? You don't have that when you're working in databases. You don't have that when you're working in Power BI. And you definitely don't have that when you're working inside the Power Pivot model, right? Which is this columnar database inside Excel. So when you're writing functions inside Power Pivot using DAX, you have to use structured references. And there are two types of structured references. There are fully qualified structured references and unqualified structured references. Now, technically here, I could use an unqualified structured reference, but I've chosen to use a fully qualified structured reference. Now, what does that mean? So just as a reminder, and we discussed this a few times, the table that we're working in right now is the fact table of internet sales. So the fact internet sales table, right? And you've gone through and you've learned about Inman and Kimball and data warehouses. So when I say fact table and star schemas, you know what I mean. And if you don't, please go back and watch those beginning data warehouse videos, because those are really helpful in understanding what's happening here. Okay. So we've got the fact internet sales table, sales amount column. Okay. So the sales amount field in the fact internet sales table. That's considered a fully qualified structured reference because it tells you the entire path of this data that we're using. Now, I could just do this. That's called an unqualified structured reference. And now this would work, but it only works if you're writing an expression using a field in that specific table. So because I'm in the fact internet sales table, I can write an unqualified structured reference here and it will be fine. Okay? Because the table knows the objects that are inside it. But if I wanted to pull data from another table inside my data model, so for example, the DIM product table, if I wanted the product name to match the product key, the only way I could write that into this expression is using a fully qualified structured reference. So it would be dim product, then square brackets with the name of the field like product name inside those fields, which would give you a fully qualified structured reference. And what does that look like? Well, actually, we don't need that here. So let's go back and we'll put our fully qualified in. So it's fact, internet sales, and we want sales amount, I do believe. Sales amount. Okay. So now remember, we're doing this from the inside out, sort of. So let's look. Our goal was to sum, right? So we've got the sum of fact internet sales amount. Now that's, as of right now, the entire amount. So if this was just a regular old sum, it would tell me the grand total of everything we've sold. That would be it. But we're going to use this calculate function to filter away, so we just see product. We'll go with product 214 to start. Okay. So after we enter the expression, we're going to hit comma, and it's going to ask us for a filter. Okay. So we're going to filter fact internet sales based on product key. So one thing that could cause some confusion for you, see where it says product key, so fact internet sales product key 214. This is actually a pretty cool thing. I could continue to write expressions based on existing measures. So you see I've got this measure I've created down here called product 214. I created that before I started the video, and now that it's done, I could actually write a function that includes that measure. Now we don't want that yet. We just want product key, just regular old product key. Okay. And actually, to cut down confusion, instead of using 214, since I already did that one, we're going to go product key and we'll go 528. Okay, whoops, 528, there we go. So what that's doing is, so I've written the expression, we're going to add, and we're going to add up the values of product key 528, right? So fact internet sales, 528, okay? So I'm going to close that off. It's going to chug, and it's going to tell me that we made 15,444.05. So that's pretty low. And I'll jump over here, and we'll call this product 528. So that is the calculate function just to start. Now, calculate can get way more complicated here. So, for example, say we want to riff off of this a little bit. Say we want to then write a function to evaluate to see if we hit that $80,000 goal. Okay. So if we hit the $80,000 goal, it'll say that we hit target. If not, it'll say we're below target, right? So over here, you'll see that I've got below target, and it's actually calculating that based on that total calculation. And there's two ways we could do this. I can show you both. So I could go in and I can reference this original measure, or I could take this entire calculate function, wrap it inside an if statement, and make it work. So let me show you how to do that both ways with the calculate function. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat a little bit so we don't have to go through and write this function out really long. So I'm going to take this original expression that just calculated 528, the total value of product 528. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to jump over and I'm going to write another expression here. Whoops. There we go. I'm going to write another expression, right? This is an explicit measure. So I'm going to paste that in. Then I'm going to jump over here and I'm going to get a little creative. So I'm going to write an if statement here. And we covered basic if statements in the previous video. And the easy thing about DAX and if statements is they're kind of the same as in Excel. So you've got the logical test, the value of true, value of false. They work the same. There's really not much to them, so it doesn't require a lot of effort. Switch, for example, might require a little bit more. We'll look at that in a few. But for now, all I've done is I've put the if statement in front of calculate. So now this entire expression from the previous work, calculate some internet sales of 528, is in the logical test. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over, and I'm still in that logical test. So if all of that, okay, is less than $80,000, whoop, that's $80,000, okay. So if everything we just calculated is less than $80,000, then we are below target. And if not, the target has been met. Met. So we're going to close that off. So all we did was we took that previous expression, we wrapped it inside an if statement, and now it actually tells me we're below target. Now remember what the sweet spot of this is, and I'm going to go back and change this. So we'll say this is 80. Oh, so there is one thing. So we'll say product 528 evaluation. Okay, so one thing that we would want to do differently here that I didn't think about until we got into it is you can't reuse the name of a measure. So because I had 80,000 target based on that 214, if I had typed 80,000 target again here, it wouldn't have let me do it because you can't repeat the name of measures. So for the second measure here, I've typed product 528 evaluation. And to make it a little bit better, I'm actually going to jump up here. I'm going to change this one to product 214 evaluation. And it's going to do that calculation for me. Cool. So now we've got that. So remember, as we close this off, and we'll jump over to another video here, if I were to now create a pivot table based off of, we definitely do not run an update while we're in the middle of making a video. So there's an update available for Office. We'll hold off on that for now. So we go to our fact internet sales, and you'll see inside our pivot table now we will have, look at that, we will have product 528, product 528 evaluation. So if I drop this in, it actually tells me product 528 below target. And I can just pop it right in. And I can go product 214 below target. Okay. Now, here's the sweet spot of this, and I want to make sure that you follow. We have created a connection to an SQL database through Power Pivot for Excel. If that SQL database updates with sales, so as your sales are coming in, as they're going through that process, right, as those are happening real time, when your uh, workbook updates, when your data model updates, this that you're seeing right here is going to automatically switch from below target to target met. It's going to update on its own. So it's a real live dashboard that's happening here. So the real benefit of what you're getting here is you are able to create a connection to an external database, model whatever analytics you need, whatever key performance indicators, whatever measures you need off of that, and then show that in a dashboard visualization. Okay. So that's where we're going to stop. I got a couple other videos for you today. So come back in and check out some of my count functions. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the related function, the if function, and the switch functions. And we'll work a little bit with something called time intelligence inside DAX. So we're not quite done for the day. This was just a short one to get started. The calculate function is the equivalent of a sum if, count if, average if kind of deal. The one other benefit of that is that you can write logical expressions in there as well. So just like if you were using a sum if, you could do sum if less than a certain value, which is pretty cool. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, and we'll be back here in a few.